Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's headline is Pet Beaver's Fate. Ate self-rising flower and swelled until he burst. The subheadline says, famous Maine hunter chats about a smart creature that was caught when young and learned strange tricks. It says, Joe Francis is one of the best-known guides, hunters, and trappers in the state of Maine. He lives in what is known as the Debsconic Deadwater on the west branch of the Penobscot River, about 23 miles from Norcross, Maine. Like all hunters and trappers, he lives in a cabin of his own on the river's bank and makes many trips in all directions in his canoe. His home is the rendezvous for hunters and guides. When they assemble in Francis's house at nighttime, and after they have had their supper of fried bacon and bread, and cigars have been lighted, the rich stories that are told of hunting life are remembered for years by those who listen to them. It is useless to say that all these stories contain a basis of truth, but before they are finished, the imagination runs to a point somewhat higher than the limit allowed in a courtroom or other places. One night, when all the guides had told their stories of experiences, both quaint and terrible, old Joe himself straightened up and said, "Now I'll give you a true story." Of course, everybody at once prepared to listen. "It was some years ago," went on Joe, "when I trapped an old mother beaver and her 3 little ones. I secured the pelt of the mother beaver, which was a fine one, and the 3 little ones I took home with me. I began to try to raise them on a little gruel I made up out of flour and water. Well, they didn't thrive very much on it, at least 2 of them didn't, and they naturally pined away and died. I had one left, and he was the brightest little fellow you ever saw. He sort of took naturally to the gruel I made for him, and began to thrive all right. I stopped feeding him with a spoon after a while, and made a bottle of the stuff each night. It was just worth anybody's money to see that little beaver take that bottle, squat on his hind legs, and drink it until he had enough. When he was about 5 weeks old, would you believe it, he begun to build dams. Up to that time, he had been sleeping in the same bed with me at night, and we would keep each other warm. Early one morning, before day had begun to crack, I saw him creep out of the bed and begin to gather everything lying around and pull them up to the cracks of the door. He even got my shirt, and the first thing I knew, he had the slickest little dam made that you ever saw. He kept doing that thing every morning until he had used up all my clothes, and I had to pull them away from the door every morning before I could dress myself. I got very fond of that little fellow, and I thought he was the slickest little thing that ever lived. I got out of flour one day and went up to the nearest trading point to get it and some other things, but I forgot all about the flour, and when I got back, my little pet was very hungry, and I didn't know what to do. But I remembered that I had some self-rising flour in the house. I was kind of doubtful about giving him that, but as the little beaver was so hungry, I saw that I just had to give him something. So I mixed up a little of the flour and gave him. It didn't seem to hurt him or do any harm, so I made him up a bottle of it. Well, it wasn't many hours before that beaver began to rise and swell, and I couldn't stop it. Before midnight, that little beaver had swelled up until he was as big as his mother was, and I had to kill him to end his pains, but I got paid for a grown beaver's pelt anyhow. Everybody silently acknowledged that that was one of the biggest lies told that night. This story came from the great state of Ohio, being reported in the Defiance Express of March 5th, 1902. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.